investors, okay? We should all blame them. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. Okay, look, we all know it's not that simple. Even though you might hate investors and you think that they are the absolute worst people on the planet and they're leeches on society, it's not that simple. It's a complex issue, and that's why I want to talk about it more broadly. A group of people that I would say have the most responsibility in our country but don't get held accountable enough is the actual government themselves. I'm talking about policymakers, politicians, basically anybody in power that can influence laws, rules, and regulations. These are the real culprits, in my opinion, that have failed us, because these are the people that create laws and put them into practice, and they haven't really done justice to the newer generation that wants to buy a house. Now look, we can all sit here and blame investors for buying up property and reducing supply and eventually driving up prices, but at the end of the day, we would just be, fighting amongst ourselves. Very rarely do people ask the question, who are the people that created the necessary conditions that allowed the housing crisis to happen in the first place? A lot of people say that negative gearing is the issue and they blame investors for taking advantage of it. What I say is, if the government is going to give certain benefits to certain people for doing certain things, of course people are going to take advantage of that. You best believe they will take absolute maximum advantage. And as they should, because it's their right, it's legal, it's rational, and they have every right to do what they want with their money. Instead of blaming investors, why don't we as a society blame the government that created such laws in the first place? Why are we not fighting for change rather than doing the easy thing, which is getting pissed at people who buy investment properties? I think it would be a lot more effective if we all just banded together and focused on the people that create such laws. Now, I know some people might be thinking just because it's legal, it doesn't make it ethical for investors to take advantage. And to that I say, why are we placing so much ethical weight on the investor and letting the government get a free pass? Shouldn't the government be held more accountable, ethically speaking, because they have the power to impact millions with their decisions? Now look, ethics is a big topic, so I'm not going to go into it here. I might make a separate video, so let me know if you want that. Now look, I might be going on a bit of a rant here, but this is where it gets even more deeper, if you will. I was doing some digging and I found a couple articles. Let's take a look. Alright, so Houses of Parliament, politicians own an estimated $370 million worth of property. So apparently 225 federal politicians have $370 million tied up in the property market, and apparently that is a conservative estimate. But if we scroll down in the article, we can see that the true figure is somewhere between $370 to $500 million, which is $500 million in property holdings for these politicians, which is pretty insane. Now this article is 5 years old, so the property values may even be a lot more than this. 50% of MPs own 2 or more properties compared to just 10% of ordinary Aussies. Now as you can see, politicians on both sides of the coin, the coalition and the Labour government, they both own a crap ton of properties. This article also says that coalition politicians that obviously oppose the crackdown on negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions, they are the biggest property owners. Another article from realestate.com.au, this is a more recent article, and it goes on to say that 205 politicians own about 421 homes between them, so that's around 2.05 homes per person on average, which means that right now roughly around 65% of politicians own 2 or more homes. And when you're making around 200 grand a year, as you guys can see, which is the base salary for an MP, what else are you going to do with your leftover income besides buying property? Now, of course, these politicians are not doing anything illegal. As I mentioned before, it is the person's right to do whatever they want with their money, as long as they're not breaking the law and as long as they're following the rules and regulations. But it does make me think, right, when you're in power and the system that you're governing is the same system that has allowed you to accumulate large amounts of property wealth, why would you make any sort of meaningful reform when that same reform could potentially hurt your financial position? It's not in your best financial interest to make any sort of meaningful change and make housing affordable, because it could make your own property holdings be worth less. It's of course in the public's best interest, but it's not really in the politician's personal best interest. And this is what I believe, to be very honest with you guys. I think over the years, people have come in and they've gone, they've only really looked after themselves and their own holdings and their friends and whatnot, and the average Australian basically continues to get screwed. Until we get changes from the very top, from the governing body, things will not change. The fact is, if you amend certain laws and regulations, property can be made out to be an unattractive investment, but it's very hard to do, seeing as property is basically like religion in this country. There needs to be more education on other asset classes to really change the narrative, like for example investing in equities as an example, as opposed to just buying up property. Because let's be honest, people are out here just trying to grow their wealth, they're trying to look after their families, and property is the only thing they know. If there is more education around the stock market, ETFs, passive investing, stock market investing, all that sort of stuff, we could really cause a shift here and cause people to invest in equities and hopefully stop buying up property. We just need to give people a different avenue to invest, because the way that things work now, most ordinary working class people work hard to buy their own house. Once they've done that and they have a bit of money left over, they look towards buying investment properties to secure their future and their children's future. And to be honest, you really can't fault them for that. Everybody is trying to make money, and they're trying to secure their own future and build their net worth for themselves or their own children, and that's what we're all doing here. So you can't really blame the average Aussie for following this pipeline of moving towards buying properties. I mean, if you look at the stats, you can see that 71% of property investors only end up buying one investment properties, and the vast majority of people are not at fault here, right? Because most people only end up buying one property, and I would say it is quite likely that these people are the same, mum and dad investors, which means that they're ordinary working class people trying to invest for their families. So these people are not part of the problem. This is basically all they know, because property has been shoved down their throat and property is put on a pedestal in this country. Going back to my previous point of people not really understanding the stock market and thinking that it's a gamble, and then going towards property instead. So going back to the question of this video and the video title, who do we blame for this absolute mess of a housing crisis in Australia? Well, that is for you to decide, but for me, I think the government has to take the majority of the responsibility here, because they have created the laws and rules that basically govern everything, and had things been done correctly from the beginning, we might not be in this position. They've basically failed the ordinary working class Aussie, and if things don't change from the top, I don't think there's going to be any sort of productive moves towards housing affordability. There needs to be more reform for sure, and more education on other asset classes like stocks, ETFs, so people, stop moving towards property and really diversify and be open-minded about the stock market. We just need people to get out of this property-only mindset. As for me, and for full transparency, I do have plans to buy a property sometime in the future for diversification, and I plan to share the whole process from start to finish on here. So yeah, stay tuned. If you liked this video or you disagreed with it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more disagreeable content, check out these two videos right here. This is part 1 and part 2 of my most unpopular investing beliefs. So go check it out, and guys, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. 50% of MPs own